Alright, welcome back to the Recipe Analyst. Today I'll be making Amatriciana with braised pork shoulder from the Italian American Cookbook. And to start, I put some pancetta in the freezer for about 10 minutes to stiffen up for a little bit later. And now I'll weigh out about 1.25 pounds of this picnic half. The recipe calls for a pork shoulder, but this worked just fine. And once I have about 1/4 pound plus a pound of the pork, I'm gonna trim the fat and then cut it into cubes. The recipe asks for 1-inch cubes, but they don't have to be exact because they're gonna become tender in the end result and break down a little bit. So as long as they're similarly sized, everything should be okay. I put those in a bowl once I'm done cutting them up, and I set them to the side for a little bit. And then I go ahead and cut my red onions. I ended up using 1.5 red onions. The recipe calls for 2 cups. I had a little bit more than 2 cups from 1.5 red onions. Next, I'm gonna process the pancetta that I had in the freezer. I just add that to the food processor and then I pulse it until it kind of becomes a thick paste. So this is what it looks like after a few seconds, probably like 45 seconds in the food processor. Next, I'm gonna season the cut up pork with some salt and pepper. And I'll just use my hands to rub that in. Next, I'll add some vegetable oil to a large pot over medium-high heat. Now I can add my seasoned pork cubes. And I'm gonna cook these until they're browned on all sides. While the pork is browning, I added some red pepper to the onions because that's gonna go in after this at the same time. I'm just stirring the pork occasionally to get it browned on all sides. Once the pork is brown to your liking, you can go ahead and remove it from the pot and drain as much oil as you can while you're removing it, but leave all the fat in the pan and add the pancetta that we made into a paste, break it up and cook that until it's well browned. Once it's well browned, I can go ahead and add the onions with the crushed red peppers. Stir that together and let that cook until the onions are softened and translucent. And while the onions are cooking, I go ahead and pour the whole tomatoes into a bowl and crush them with my hand. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I basically just tried to crush each tomato individually until they were no longer whole. I also went ahead and measured out 2 cups of the chicken broth. Once the onions were well cooked, softened, and translucent, I add the pork back in, followed by the tomatoes and the chicken broth. Now I'm gonna stir that together and bring that to a simmer. Once it comes to a simmer, I'll give it a quick stir again and then cover it. So the recipe asks to cover it and simmer for 60 minutes and stir it every 10 minutes. So I go ahead and set a timer for 60 minutes, and every 10 minutes I come back and give it a quick stir. After about 30 minutes, I put some water in a pot and put it over a high heat to bring it to a boil, and I seasoned it generously with some salt. You can probably wait the whole hour because I misread the recipe. After the simmer covered, you're supposed to simmer it for another 30 minutes uncovered so you can wait on the water. But while that was going, I went ahead and squeezed the lemon and got 4 tablespoons of butter ready for finishing. I continued to check every 10 minutes on the sauce, giving it a stir, making sure it wasn't sticking too bad to the bottom. I add the pasta to the water once it's boiled. And after about an hour of simmering covered, I can remove the top and let it simmer for about another 30 minutes until the pork is tender, uncovered. And since I cooked the pasta a little early, I reserved a cup of the pasta water and drained it. Then I add that water back into the pot and cover it just to try to prevent it from sticking. And I set that to the side off of the heat. And I check the sauce about every 10 minutes again, checking the tenderness of the pork. And here I let it go a little too long. It kind of started to burn a little bit on the bottom. So I go ahead and add the sugar, stir that in, and I drain the pasta again so I can add it to the sauce. I give that a stir, and now I can finish things up with the lemon juice and the butter. So at that point, the sauce and the pasta is pretty much done, and I can put it in a bowl and give it a taste. So what did I think of the Amatriciana with braised pork shoulder from the Italian American Cookbook? Long story short, this was great. The flavors are on point. The textures are also very good. The pork shoulder is very tender. The longer you cook it, the more tender it'll probably be. The red onions pretty much disappeared physically, but you can still taste that they're there. It has a pretty good balance of savoriness and sweetness, and I just really like everything about it. The flavor is nice and deep and complex, but it doesn't take forever to make. It's about 3 hours, but a lot of it is kind of just waiting. The pasta choice also was very good. It holds up well to the kind of chunky sauce, and it's just a really good combination. Overall, I'm going to give this recipe a 9 out of 10. Anyway, if you have any recipes that you want me to try, you can let me know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.